There, in today's video, we're going to be going over the last of the open source development projects, in which I'm going to be doing a code explanation for the assignment that I've been working on, in which I have developed a expenses tracker to keep track of your finances and your spending habits. Without further ado, let's get into the code review. So first we start off with the class purchases. This is the constructor for the purchase object. In it we have variable names such as the ID, the name of the purchase, the cost of the purchase, the date that the purchase happened, and the category it resides. Then we have a definition for the initialization, which includes all of those variables as parameters, and then within that we assign the variables from this class to the parameters we provided in the initialization function. Then moving forward, we have the number of items, which is used to keep track of how many items have been entered into the system. Then we have the print divider function. This just prints a series of lines to act as a divider for certain parts, more or less for formatting reasons. Then we have the add purchase function. We first declare a global instance of the number of items, and then using the MP list that I'll talk about later, we add attributes like the name, cost, the date, and the category to that item based on the number of items. So the number of items acts as the index, and then we increment number of items by 1. Now we move into the main menu function. So while true, we print the divider, then we print out our basic menu, then we move on to asking the user to input one of the three options, whether to add a purchase, calculate monthly expenses, or show monthly expense report, or enter -1 to exit the program. First, we get the user input, then we validate whether or not the user entered 1, 2, 3, or -1. So if they entered 1, then that'll move him to the add purchase section, in which we ask the user to enter in all details regarding the item. And then once all that's said and done, we then add the purchase using the add purchase function. And then we say that the item has been added, and then we ask the user if they would like to add another item. If they input anything but yes, repeat will equal false. So if they do say yes, then it'll go back to a start, and if it's no, then the loop will break. Then we move into the second screen, which is to calculate monthly expenses. So here we ask the user to enter in a date, and then we use a for loop to run through all the items to try to see if we can find a match. We use a for loop to run through all of the items. We append the ones that match the date conditions, the year and the month, to the expenses list. Then we initialize a total variable equaling 0.00, and then we do another for loop for x in range 0 to the length of expenses. Just add up the expenses, and then we print out expenses for this date total, and then the amount given rounded to 2 decimal places. The third option is to give a monthly expense report. In there, we ask the user to choose a year that they would like to show the report for. Then we get the input for that. Then we create a list variable. And then in the for loop, we run through all of the categories. We define a total variable. Then another for loop goes through all the number of items. And we try to check to see if we can find a match between the make purchase list category is equal to the main categories based on the x variable. And if so, we do total plus equal mpy.cost. And then after all that's said and done, we calculate the average by doing round total divisible by 12, 2, so for the whole year. And then we do list.append the total and the average. And then lastly, there's a for loop to simply print out all the expenses for each of the categories, -1, and we print out the grand total and the average. And then lastly, if the user inputs a -1, then it just breaks out of the loop, and that breaks out of it. And then moving on, we have some setup before the main function is executed, like setting up the category names, which we have all of these lovely ones, and then initializing the MC and MP lists, first one being for main categories, and the other one for make purchases. And then we have a for loop to load all of those categories into the list. And then lastly, we have a for loop that simply just initializes a bunch of empty purchases, to which the add purchase function utilizes. And then lastly, we call the main menu, which starts the whole program up. And that is pretty much all there is to the code explanation. Now we're going to move on towards the code demonstration.